I don't think I would have ever imagined having to do a video such as a review video. But here we are today doing a review video. So, uh, you know, he likes to pronounce my name Tex Maxware. It's Tech Maxware. I don't really know what to say to begin this. Just kind of a random one-shot crap video. I might actually edit this. I might not. I don't know. Uh, Basically, I'm doing this video in response to Druaga1's. I can barely ever pronounce his name right, even though I hear it a million times. Of course, he installed Arch Linux. I am the man who helped him with the commands, or basically just doing the install. I actually wanted to kind of be in that video, uh, to kind of like be in there, like as voice some shit. But of course, just first script or basically video reasons, we just thought better off. So I was basically over Discord the entire time, um, telling him how to do things, or what's it doing, and then whatever else. And basically, that's why I probably never heard my voice in that video. They could probably answer the first question, like, well, why was he not in there? Really? Well, that's because I was just over text chat, really. Which is actually not that bad thing, because I actually didn't have... I could, I know, but I'm busy a lot, guys. I have a lot of shit going on in my life, and so maybe that's why my channel actually struggles so much. Me even putting any content out. I actually do want to put more content out, and I am working on a few projects, by the way. But probably better. Anyways, so I am doing a review video for in review to this, pretty much for the extent I wanted to possibly answer some questions or comment on this in a way where I didn't have to write 5 whole paragraphs that no one would probably read anyway. In the comment section or somewhere else or something. I don't know. I think just making a general review video maybe was a better option. I've already seen this video once. I think he did a great job on it. I think it's amazing. And I actually turned out better than I thought, because I actually never got the video sequence to work like the desktop interface to work too well on my end, because I was using a virtual machine to simulate what I was doing, versus he was using real hardware, and it worked way better for him. It actually worked. I mean, mine barely even worked at all. So, yeah. Anyways, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right into this. I don't really want to talk too much about it. I'm hoping the volume, everything works okay. I don't even know if I'm going to really edit this too much. It's a long video, and I don't really have the time to edit all this crap footage. So I'm sure there's going to be some editing flaws that you might see. That's because I didn't even probably edit this at all. Sorry, I'm just kind of throwing this out there and getting it done. I'm sorry to all the perfectionists out there. I have a life. I don't really have too much time to do too much. Real project videos, of course, editing will happen, but something like this, no. So anyways, let's get right into it. Let's see if I can get this turned down here. Creating crappy video. Yeah, I mean, my channel might be the contender for being worse on that, but here we go.
Smokers, Druaga1 here. You know, usually how people say install this on an SSD, or install this, or install that. Well, today we're going to be potentially doing the mother of all installs. That's right, we're going to be installing Arch Linux. Now, usually when I install things, it's a computer that's in a box, a mess. I've always had this, and I've just never used it. Well, I used to in some previous videos, back before I had the table space and just liked sprawling. This is the machine that has a pretty decent power supply with the graphics cards connectors, which normally I don't have. It's got a lot of stuff here. The motherboard itself is a Core 2 Quad running at, I think 2.8 gigahertz. Used to be my main computer back in like 2010 or something, and it isn't anymore, but this will probably...
I seriously wish I had my computer from 2010. I hardly even have my computer from 2 years ago. I'm using my same CPU, my AMD FX 4100, since around, that time period. But I've upgraded pretty much everything around it. So, it's just, yeah. By the way, I'll be doing a lot of pausing in this. If you want to see this video straight through, just go to his channel and watch it. This is my review video, so if the pausing gets annoying, you might just go over to his channel and watch that first.
Probably be our machine. Now, it's not exactly a modern one. The most modern computer I even have is, well, my 2013 MacBook Pro, actually, would probably be the newest computer I have. The main computer I use is actually a 2012 build with some improvements as time's gone on. So, in order to improve this a little bit, I'm going to be kicking it into a little bit more high gear. Now, I know that probably installing a lot of drivers and having everything work easily is pretty much the realm of Ubuntu and not Arch Linux, because we're already stepping outside of Debian territory. But I'm going to kick it up a notch and put my old GTX 660 in here. So if it turns out that we can play some games, it's going to be able to handle it.
So the first thing I want to say here is throughout the next part of this video, you see him install a few pieces of hardware in his machine. The video card and SSD aren't really a big deal at all. However, sound card and an additional network card, I would have absolutely not have done. Especially the sound card, you'll see him use a Sound Blaster. Sound Blaster is genuinely the worst card you can ever use with Linux of any kind. In fact, I have a Sound Blaster Z in my computer right now, and I use Linux on a separate partition, and it's very, very finicky. Kernel 418, and now more used 420, is actually more. It has added all kinds of more support for Sound Blaster, but it is definitely a card you want to try to avoid if you're using Linux at all. Typically, anything on board is what you want to try to use, which some people might be confusing to figure that out, but that's usually what I try to use. Anyway, so you'll see what I'm talking about when he adds all this stuff in.
Okay, there's a lot of fucking cables in here. Jesus. We can just plug this directly in for card power. Now you're probably wondering, you've already upped the game on actually having a case, having a decent video card, more or less, and randomly having a 5 1/4 inch drive there that you can't even use. I'm about to up my game with the SSD as well. Introducing the 128 gigabyte 2.5 inch SATA 3 Fatty Dove Racing SSD. Yeah, we're really scraping the bottom of the barrel now for SSDs, and this is actually a real SSD, and I will say it's the only one that I've ever seen have sudden power off recovery. That would imply.
So I'm here to tell you right now, this is total bullshit. SSDs have zero support for Smart. This is also total bullshit. This is total bullshit. Not sure about this one. Global and enhanced endurance by global wear leveling. Most of this stuff is decent, but they pretty much lost without these 3, maybe 4 pieces. Oh, you can't even see my mouse pointer. I'm sorry. The trusted computing group supports Smart, sudden power off, and the real-time drive encryption. Yeah, those guys, those are total. The operating system support, Windows OS, Linux. It's generally just SATA. If your OS can support a SATA, which pretty much anything modern obviously can now, you're just fine to use this. It's just another disk drive.
That it has capacitors to allow the final writes to happen before it shuts off in the event of a power failure. It says data retention. Again, another interesting specification you don't normally see on the boxes, although I don't really read the boxes that much, but I do keep them. So let's compare that to this.
I only keep storing boxes.
Well, it does say, for more detailed warranty and product information, please visit their website. But it doesn't say anything on the actual packaging. If we go back to the Xeno SSD from a previous video, what does it say? Operation system? No. So I'm not going crazy here. This is not normal. Operating temperature, serial ATA revision, interface rates, okay. Enhanced endurance by global wear leveling, that would imply integrated trim support. Trusted computing, smart. Again, that's sudden power off recovery, that is intriguing. Real-time full drive encryption with advanced encryption standard. What?
See, I don't know.
Real-time encryption built into the drive.
Yeah. Maybe?
Okay.
But that'd be really weird. I don't know about that.
I got a 2-year warranty.
Why would it matter?
Samsung, but whatever.
You just plug another drive in somewhere else.
Let's go ahead and crack this baby open, I guess. Ooh, I think this is a nice box. This might be one of the nicest SSD boxes I may have ever seen. It's more substantial.
This is one of those boxes where
other boxes.
they use more money on the packaging than they did
Samsung box. It's just like, oh, here it is. Here's your SSD. We know what you want.
There's more money spent on the packaging there is in the SSD.
Whoa. Okay. First of all, we got foam. Let's compare that to the packaging of the leading brand here. First of all, well, that's not what's supposed to be in there, but plastic. And usually it's not even in a anti-static tag. This is some premium shit right here.
I do like the anti-static bag. It is kind of nice.
There's not any documentation or anything on the inside.
It's not totally necessary, but
it's a nice foam insert for sure. Now, usually I've kind of reviewed SSDs on the basis of how they feel in my hand. Whether they feel like a cheap plastic toy. This one's made out of metal. You can feel that it's mostly hollow. A lot of extra space in there.
Yeah, it's an SSD.
But this feels pretty good. If you were to compare it to the Patriot Torque, should be about the same. But if you were to compare it to a SanDisk,
yeah,
this feels like the McDonald's plastic. This feels
Dude,
like
I wish you could. This is my Happy Meal. Seriously,
you should.
I would take a Happy Meal
So,
SSD built in right
I
in
guess it's time to install our operating system onto this. Now, I'm not even sure if this board supports SATA 3. So, it might be kind of slower than normal, possibly. But, you know me, I don't care too much. It's a little bit of a bubble on the sticker.
Not properly insulated. No.
Whatever. Yeah. Just leave it like that, I guess. How about a Keytronic keyboard and the prestigious Razer Death Adder?
Oh no, I do not like Razer hardware.
So this is now all hooked up and good to go. We've got our graphics card.
To kind of chime in myself here, that the video is supposed to be for me anyway. I don't like Razer. It's totally unrelated to the video. I do not like Razer hardware. In fact, I just replaced my Razer keyboard I spent $100 for with this absolutely free Dell keyboard that I literally got for nothing at a surplus store we have here, or surplus market we have here. And yeah, I literally got like 5 or 6. I can get like 5 or 6 of these keyboards for free. I only got like 2 this time, but and this Dell keyboard's amazing. I mean, it feels great. It's just one of those default keyboards you get with a new computer. But I absolutely love this thing. In fact, I've had these before. But that Razer keyboard, they literally had keys on upside down, took it out of the box. I didn't really go to ever repair those. I thought I would just eventually return it. I never did because I've got so much other shit going on. And I'm probably just going to sell it as is. The feel Razer keyboards aren't even that great. Honestly, to me, I just can't get along with them for some reason. Maybe it's because I grew up on, shit hardware anyway. The Razer mouses, I don't even want to use one of those. Like, You guys think, oh, there's so many extra buttons on here, numpad. Why? I just need left click, right click, and scroll. What the fuck else do we need a mouse to do? It's like, all that extra bullshit adds extra complication I don't need. Anyways, back to the video.
Firewire 400 card, which is also a USB card, which really won't help us. We have an extra Ethernet card in case the onboard one doesn't work. And that's pretty much all there is. I probably want to be extra safe and add a sound card as well, because again, we might have some issues with the onboard.
You'd have been better off using the onboard card.
So I'm probably going to have to ditch the card there. If I'm going to take it up yet another notch, why not do it with some style?
See, and I agree. I love Sound Blaster so much. My favorite sound card. I actually hate the fact that there's almost zero support for Sound Blaster. In fact, later on in the video, there is no sound with his stuff, and that's probably because he was using Sound Blaster. I forget exactly if he actually did, but yeah. And the funny thing is Sound Blaster, the drivers will all be there, and it'll even say it's a Sound Blaster, yada yada yada, but the thing just won't play any sound. And it really it's just this wonky thing with Sound Blaster, with the drivers by the open source drivers by themselves. Sound Blaster doesn't even supply drivers for their sound cards for Linux. That's why if you're going to use Linux, you're primarily on that machine, I would avoid Sound Blaster like the plague. There are other sound cards that are just fine, but unfortunately, as of now anyway, Sound Blaster, for a while actually, they've kind of had terrible support when it comes to Linux.
Sound Blaster Live 5.1 surround sound card that I won't actually use like that because I don't have surround sound, and I never have. Now, of course, I've probably made my job 10 times harder, but if I'm going to truly become the Linux pro that I think I might be able to be, possibly, but probably not, I'm going to have to learn how to install drivers for a frickin' Sound Blaster Live.
Well, good luck with that, because no one really can most of the time.
So there, we've got our magic rig all set up and ready to go. It's very likely that if I were to install something like Windows XP on this, it'd probably be able to run Crysis no problem. But fortunately, we're not going to go straight to that territory right away.
XP64.
Now today I'm going to be getting some help from someone who knows Linux a bit better than I do.
Oh no.
And no, it's not Akabakuku this time. TechMaxWare, who is going to be giving me a few pointers on setting up Arch Linux properly on...
Properly with a million quotation marks.
Presumably this hardware, I have no idea. So first of all, I have to actually download Arch Linux itself, and instead of willy-nilly burning it onto a CD, we're going to burn it onto a USB flash drive, because we're moving into the future here, and I can't just go wasting all of the extra blank CDs that I have like a million of and don't know what to do with.
So I just noticed those Bose speakers.
As you can see,
I love my optical CDs, by the way. Not to cut in. I love optical CD or discs. I still use a hell of more of them than I ever do flash drives, but I still, of course, use flash drives too. I also noticed these. Oh, my mouse pointer works now. These Bose speakers right here. Oh, I like those things. Those are good.
See, it did detect the Fatty Dove SSD, so it's not just a weird relabeled drive. It is actually Fatty Dove.
They got their own ROM on that thing,
which is pretty fucking hilarious.
I love that name.
And my CMOS battery is dead. So here we are already booting Linux. So we can boot Arch Linux, boot a OS.
Okay, so here's where the review shit actually starts happening in my video, about 20 minutes in. So I apologize for all the extra bullshit. I might actually leave in the comments somewhere. Hey, this is where you might want to start watching.
Run memtest, hardware information.
By the way.
As you can see, there's no option for install, only in like text mode. You can only boot it. So we're going to go to the live CD and then install it from there. Seems to be doing good so far. And this is what I was fucking afraid of. Text mode only.
So I also want to make a comment on when he said the mother load of installs, or whatever he said before towards the beginning of the video. Arch Linux doesn't even compare to Gentoo Linux. They actually, as you kind of see, it's not terrible, but if you, I, I honestly do not like Gentoo. Um, it's almost like compiling your own kernel at that point. In fact, because it's that difficult and that ridiculous, majority of the time, even Linux guys don't even like it. Because it's just like, why not just compile my own kernel at that point? So they hardly even have a package manager. So as this text mode stuff is very, I guess, definitely something that scares many, including myself, actually. I'd rather just have an installer and have it done right away and configure my system like I want it to. When it comes to, like, custom drivers and blah, 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 I don't care. I just want the damn thing to work. I can configure it, with a desktop all I want later. I'll leave it up to the developers to do a better job. That's what they like to do. Of course, I just don't have the time to do all that shit with my PC. However, people do, and if you're it really generally, like I'll say, kind of to point out to this video, Arch Linux isn't directly for everyone, obviously. It's really more geared towards people who want a very customized system. Don't necessarily want to to work on all their own custom packages and drivers, but they want a customized system with packages. So if I'm going to build like a certain kind of server or something, but I don't want to have to use Debian because I have to strip all that out of there in the first place. It might be easier for me to build my own Arch distribution for my own thing, whatever that might be, in place of that. And of course, you can also build desktop stuff as well easily. People do. In fact, there are whole distributions that are built right off Arch, just like this. So there's definitely pluses and minuses to Arch. But if you're just one who wants to use Linux and get bugged at because, oh, you're not using an advanced version, Arch is not really advanced. It's just a more customizable from the beginning sort of thing. But if you just want to use a desk, if you're fine with Debian and Ubuntu like I am, I'm very proficient in Linux and have done it for using it a lot of my life. I'm telling you right now, there's nothing wrong with using Debian. So don't listen to those guys who are like, you gotta use something advanced. They actually don't really know what the hell they're talking about at that point.
How do I boot the Windows system? I guess I don't. I have to download it first and install it, and then I have something like KDE, which is, fancy dancy. Quite sure.
You have to install, like he'll figure out, of course. You install the entire OS with text mode, then you can configure that.
What I'm supposed to do at the moment, I'm assuming I have to install it, but using sudo apt get KDE or something like that, which very well may work. Aptitude. If I was on Debian, the sudo apt-get shit doesn't exist on Arch, but it's a good day because Arch Linux.
Here we go.
Version 420.
I will say this is one of the luckiest things. I don't think he even realized how lucky he is. 420 has only been out for a short time now, and distributions are finally just starting to adapt it. It's like it's been out for months now, but of course it takes distributions a little while to get all their stuff moved over to the new kernel and things and compiled properly, bug free, yada yada yada. So, and this will be the only time in history that kernel 4.20 ever exists. So, yeah, that's damn lucky.
The weed gods smile upon us this day.
Exactly.
Now, I will say that is a tremendously good omen, and I have nothing but renewed optimism for this entire process. However, I still don't know what to do at all whatsoever. So, I will go consult my new friend, Tech Maxware. Okay, it's the next day, and tech support is arrivé. Now, the command I should be running is so fucking microscopic, Jesus. So we're doing this point to point here, making sure we're paying attention to everything.
It's microscopic on a real PC. But trust me, if you're doing this in a VM, you actually like the font that small because like the VM is sized like 1024 by 768 some shit. It's like small. You can't really resize that without complicated bullshit.
So dev SDA is our drive there with the 111 gigs. Let me run this. MBR only. Okay. Invalid GPT and valid MBR. Converting MBR to GPT format in memory. This operation is potentially destructive. Exit by type.
So I'm gonna go and admit, at this point we format the drive improperly, and I'm sure everyone saw that when they watched the original video if they knew what they were doing. I happen to still sometimes get confused, whereas I need a BIOS boot partition or not, which is what happened here. You will see him in the next few steps format a drive with one, monolithic partition, which is genuinely, if his system supported GPT fully, like some systems do, you would not need that BIOS boot partition. Now, it is still genuinely used because many systems still only support MBR, which don't support anything FAT32 or beyond, or they sort of kind of support NTFS anyways, for the bootloader to sit at. I did not fully remember at this point, so what you're going to see is going to be wrong. I take fault for that, and I'll kind of explain while we go through this.
Typing Q if you don't want to convert your MBR partitions to... Okay, whatever. So fucking small, Jesus. So I guess I just press enter. Ha! No.
Press O.
Oh God. You know what helps? Fucking reading. Okay. Let's read. Backup GPT data. Change a partition name. Delete a partition to show detailed information on a partition. Let's go to MTGUID partition. Oh, create a new MTGUID partition table. Okay, you're gonna have to move.
And this is one of those confusing things that GDisk will do. So GDisk is assuming here the MBR that is presently already on the SSD. They will sometimes, drive manufacturers won't write an actual file system, but they will put a file table on there, like MBR or GPT, just so your machine will recognize there's something there at all. Some machines have problems doing that. So GDisk here, which is something I do use pretty much for everything, is assuming the MBR. Whereas when I was doing this alongside him in my virtual machine using a VDI file, the VDI file was absolutely blank. So GPT just said, "Oh, I'll just write a new GDisk was just saying, "Oh, I'll just write a new GPT table, no problem." Whereas it already saw MBR here. Where I am really confused at, to be quite honest, is when he uses option O to, and this does happen on my end as well sometimes when I do other things, to write a whole new GPT table. It should have just overwrote that. I think it did, but I think actually it did. I'm also really stupid here because that wasn't the real problem. It was that his BIOS didn't support that GPT table. Okay.
Put down or something. Oh, there we go. Oh. This option deletes all partitions and creates a new protective MBR. Now I assume that we're still locked into... Well, first of all, let me unplug the flash drive. I think this should just run in memory.
See, you should never unplug. If you are booted to a Linux Live, absolutely never remove the medium. I mean, never. Until you know for sure that the OS on the target drive you're installing to is working fully, I would not ever. If you boot it to that disk, don't unplug it. Don't or remove it or whatever. As it might not be presently using anything off that disk, when you go to, as you'll see him do later, go to access things that were still on the disk and not yet to RAM, it'll of course go after the rest of the disk. If the disk ain't there, obviously it's not going to work. And really, honestly, you can't just plug it back in because it kernel stuff basically is what I'll do without going into too technical information. So, just good rule of thumb: if you're booting from that disk, don't ever unplug it. In fact, genuinely for anything computer, that's a decent idea. It's kind of like booting to the Windows XP install disk, or install, and taking the disk out before you've copied the files is kind of a good example of that in a shitty way. And even as we know, the XP disk is still used after and when XP is still installing. After you've already booted to the hard drive. Whereas Windows Vista and above, you just copy the files on there. You can remove the disk completely after that. Now, I've learned that from experience, but honestly, if you don't fully know, just leave the disk in. It's a really good idea. Rule of thumb.
Just in case it wants to erase my Arch Linux install. Now, at least it can't. Proceed.
My darn
yes.
Shares making noise.
Okay. Show detailed information on a partition. Aye. No partitions. Okay. So, oh wait, you can't fucking see that because it's off the screen. Now everything's going to be all the way at the bottom. That's great. I'm going to have to move this again. So no partitions, alright. Do it that way. Print the partition table. Oh lord. I gotta say, none of these camera angles are really helping. Get the fuck out of the way. Yeah, this is why I wanted to use like the 105mm lens. So I can zoom in on this shit, but that'd be 6 feet away, so never mind that. Okay, so we're gonna press N to add a new partition. Now this is where it all goes to shit. You ready?
Not quite
Partition
yet,
number, let's go with 1. First sector. God damn it. Why not just make an interface? Like, really? First sector, 34 to 2, whatever.
So, believe it or not, this actually is a very good interface. Versus you'd be doing this all through. You're actually doing this through a guided system. As it's not point and click, it is a guided system. Whereas others, you could do this completely with commands, and that is genuinely a hell of a lot worse. So this actually is somewhat of a decent interface while I use it.
Default 2048 size. Okay. German, I have a little bit of learned helplessness when it comes to numbers on the screen. All I had to do is press enter. Last sector. Well, maybe not. Okay. Should be good. Okay. What we did is set the partition number. The first sector was the beginning of the disk. The last sector was the end of the disk. The Linux file system was type 8300 for some god unknown reason.
So the reason why it's set for 8300, or it says that, is so Linux. So this is the G-disk does a numerical system, and that is kind of a G-disk thing on its own in a sense, per se. Well, kind of is just a standard thing. But 8300 is a certain file system number, as we already know. But if you were to actually type L when he was setting that number, it would give you a huge list of usable codes there, as I'm sure anyone else knows who uses Gdisk. And that's why maybe the relevant question might be here, like, why is it not just 1? Well, I couldn't exactly tell you why that is, but there isn't one that's just 1. They're all these codes are 4 digits of some kind. So organizing them, I believe it's by alphabetical or something, within Gdisk is genuinely how it's done. And I just know that 8300 is that default code. I can pretty much tell you EF02 is BIOS boot partition, and yet they're the ones you use more often. There are some in there that you'll never use. So there you go, or at least possibly never use.
And then, so I guess and then I assume we need to write the table to the disk and exit, so that's going to be the final thing. Now, usually when you have a Linux partition set up, you have your home, your boot, your swap. We're not going to do any of that. We're doing one monolithic partition because fuck off.
Precisely. So many people, it is very true. I mean, you can have one for your root, then you have one for your home, then for swap, then for whatever the hell else you want. You can have technically an infinite amount of partitions for each function if you really wanted to with Linux or an operating system similar. Even with Windows, actually, you can point your home directories to a different drive on Windows or anything. It's the same way in most other cases. Um, the but obviously, when you install Windows, you pretty much just have one big partition because it makes it easier. If you're installing on a single drive for just a desktop machine, there is absolutely no benefit to putting multiple partitions for different things. Maybe if you're going to do some kind of weird, interesting backup system where you're going to back up, home configurations with home folders. That way you can easily just overwrite or you can you can just overwrite the existing file system without having to touch the home directory and reformat that. There are definitely pros and cons to it, but really for just a generalized and basic setup like we're really doing here in a way, there is absolutely no reason to have to put multiple partitions. Again, this is one of those things that Linux guys say you gotta do. I stress you really don't gotta, unless there is an actual reason you want to do that. Now again, you do what you want to do, Linux guys, but I would definitely not say you ever have to, well, not ever, but majority of the time for most things, having separate anything is bad. And in most cases now, actually, you even see the swap built into the same file system. It just puts it like in a paging file, kind of like what Windows does. So it's multiple partitions. If you're having like a ginormous server set up and SANs and fucking NAS everywhere, I can see how that would be useful. But if you have one single drive, partitions don't make that much. It actually complicates things more than it really helps.
So to make sure we did it right, we print it out, and bada bing bada boom, there it is. That's our partition. Alright, write table disk and exit, W. Final checks complete, about to write GPT data, very good. Yay! Okay, so since we have the partition now, we gotta make it have a, what are we doing? What am I doing? Now,
so to explain, he just created he added to the map here. Basically, gdisk is telling the kernel, okay, here's the new partition layout. Now, obviously, there's not actually a file system there yet. gdisk just kind of wrote that to the kernel. It is now the kernel's job to say to actually write a file system to SDA1. So of course, the next part is you'll see me doing. That's sort of confusing to many. Should I say, new guys to Linux who are doing this. But that's actually how that works. In fact, again, any other operating system that uses C really is the same way. The computer can see something's there, but nothing's really there. So you have to actually write a file system at that point, which a file system, especially being ext2, which in this case it would be, is complicated. So it doesn't just write instantly. Even in Windows, it's a little more difficult.
right here, you can see
Not exactly sure why Windows is but YouTube is lagging so bad with that.
we have a partition now. SDA1.
Sort of, kind of. You have to format that.
But now we have to do mkfs
Make file system.
dev SDA1. Okay. Well, still looks the same. So we're in TextMax, we have to type part probe.
Part probe, again, genuinely updates that. As gdisk writes the new table, the kernel, again, Linux is gotta tell what to do. So you gotta tell Linux, hey, here's the new file table, dumbass. That's what part probe is doing.
And seems to do exactly the same thing.
And this is the reason why he's getting these errors, because he unplugged his flash drive, like he'll soon discover, because it can't find that drive anymore, so it's throwing all these errors.
Precisely. Maybe it's because my USB flash drive is not in and it's actually trying to get stuff from there now.
There you go.
Well, let's try and plug it back in and see if it works. Now it has less errors than before.
Yeah.
Time to restart. So much for loading the whole operating system in RAM. You gotta be kidding me, man. We have...
That actually never happens. You still have certain parts you gotta have access to disk for.
SDF, because this is the flash drive here. So... creating file system with 4K blocks. Allocated group tables. Writing super blocks and file system accounting information.
If you have a 2 terabyte hard drive, as in just a hard drive, this will take forever.
So basically, I'm an idiot. Oh shit! Alright, so DF lists the mount points, and our partition isn't among them. Mount doesn't exist. So you can understand my confusion, you know, not being a Linux person at all. Now, the actual command is mount.
So, yeah, MNT is, of course, all my Linux people will know, MNT is a directory on the under root, which is specifically designed to be kind of like a target directory to mount a new file system to, or really whatever else. Yeah, instead, so it's mount is the actual command, MNT is the point of which you're going to mount to. Confusion there.
Yeah. I think that's it. Every other freaking command in Linux is some sort of abbreviation. Throws me a curveball when it's an actual word. Who would have thought a word? Then again, I'm kind of used to dealing with shorthand in DOS.
And I will say that mount is not necessarily, I don't believe originally a bash command. So obviously Linux uses bash for a command interpreter. And as we all know, bash was first introduced, I believe it was first introduced with the AT&T mini computer, I think around the 1970s, which they called it such because it took up only a room of space. And it featured bash. And I'm sure variants of bash were used before then, but I think that's when they started really kind of calling it its own thing, so to speak, whatever. But at the time, of course, the computer that simple, far simpler than what we have now, you had to abbreviate everything for the simple 8 bytes of data was technically spendable. Like, we don't think about 8 bytes being really that much anymore at all. Whereas 8 bytes back then, when you were literally writing data to tapes, the 256K of tapes and things like that, was a lot. So you had to watch that. So that's why abbreviation was very, very important back then. Obviously, with more modern commands, with more modern software we write nowadays, we tend to try not to use abbreviation anymore. However, abbreviation, especially you might see this more in PowerShell with commandlets, is still sometimes used simply because it's faster to type. And we're doing a lot of commands, a lot of things at once. It is kind of nice to have that abbreviated stuff because it is faster. So there's still somewhat benefits to abbreviation today.
IRCD, shit like that. Okie doke. And we're done. So, DF. And now we have one at the bottom, which is our new partition. With this mounted, we're gonna go pack strap. What was it? Oh, MNT base. Oh shit. Yep, I fucking knew it. I needed internet for that. Balls. Okay, I plugged in the internet.
They're gonna tell it to get an IP address. DHCP CD is all you
like
need.
That network card, huh? I'll try the other one for this. Give it an IP address. Come on.
It would have worked with either or network card, more than likely, just by running DHCP CD, just for future reference.
Come on, what are you doing? I'm gonna plug it into the bottom one because that's the one it's probably gonna be able to find drivers and shit for. Reboot. Alright. Ah. Mount. Dev SDA, that's our partition that we made. Whoops. MNT. Okay, DF. Okay, there it is. And pack, strap, MNT base. See, I told you I just need to restart. So I guess
restarting allows the automated script to pull an IP address to work.
They got more creative with their, ASCII bars.
But you could have done less than restarting.
ASCII interface. Maybe make an ASCII disk partitioner. Fuck.
The reason why that Arch uses text mode is because you could use it on complicated or very simple setups. So there's, again, reasons. There's actually real reasons to use text mode other than just being complicated or, custom shit. What is this YouTube lag I'm getting to? Like, I hit play and it takes like a full second till I play the video.
So, I guess we're gonna wait for it to download, and we'll be back. Oh look, a lot of shit on the screen. What is all this stuff? Good fucking gravy, it's still going? Alright. Okay, it's done. Shit. Now we gotta add the new partition that has all our data in it now to be auto-mounted at startup, I think. I think that's what's happening.
So, yes, right, exactly. Again, Linux, like any piece of software, needs to be told exactly what to do. And Windows and any other operating system does all of this, of course, for you, with very complicated scripts that Microsoft spends years writing. But basically, yeah, basically, what he's doing here is, of course, adding what's called an FS tab file, which I believe stands for File System to Allocate upon Boot. And that last word there before boot doesn't really exist in the acronym, obviously. But what that means is what the kernel does is look at that file while it boots, once it loads to a point, and it mounts whatever drive it needs to mount. Now, you might think, well, why wouldn't the kernel just obviously mount its own file system? You're asking a computer to be sentient at that point. Machines don't know what the hell anything is. They're not even really doing anything when it comes to thinking, right? So the kernel doesn't actually know where it's coming from. Thus, it's just really just script. So all it's doing, if it has to mount that partition, it has to be told to mount that partition so that it can properly access the data on that partition later on in the boot process. The FS tab file is also useful for adding other disks to the boot file. I might demonstrate that here in a little after I'm done with this with this review. Basically, the FS tab file is very useful for if, like you say, you're adding more than one disk. Like you have a flash drive or an external hard drive on your desktop computer, you always want there when it starts up. It's what you use every day. Well, you don't, of course, want to mount that manually every time. That'd be annoying. So you can add that to the FS tab file, and it'll just, okay, every time it boots up, it mounts that directory. Now, obviously, I'm sure you might know that you might have to add some certain permissions or certain things to that so that it properly goes to the right mounting point and the proper whatever has access to it, blah, blah, blah. But that's a generalization of what FS tab does on its own. What this command is generally doing is genfs tab is just a little tiny script of its own. Everything's a script in Linux, basically. And that's just saying, hey, based on what I have in my system now, generate a proper FS tab file, and then this switch just means output it to this mount point. And of course, this means pipe, and within this mount point, or okay, I'm sorry. This means output that file for this drive. So what that really means is genfs tab, generate a file, output that file, but generate that file based on this drive, that's on this mount point, and put that generated file in this directory, is what it's really saying here.
Let's make sure that that actually worked.
And we're just verifying, we're just reading that file with this
See
command.
the contents of the file.
There you go, works great.
The fuck out of the way. And
God.
the fuck is that?
This is a dumb thing. Those like little things he's got, and I honestly don't know the Kirby other character. I almost wonder like those are like is like dumb as hell, like fire hazards, because like this is like power supply with 115 volts going through right here, and who knows what else on this table? Like, is that gonna like blow up sometime? I don't know.
Well, I can see that dev SDA1 is on there. I got a universal unique identifier. ext2, okay. That should be good. Alright, time to make our special directory /mnt the root.
This is where Linux becomes beautiful. To explain this command, we are setting a host name. If it's not totally obvious, so echo is, you probably already know what that command does. That just means repeat what I have to say here. And if you just set echo we legal, it would literally just return with we legal, and then of course go back to prompt. But with this pipe here, I'm telling the computer, okay, send this text into this file. Now, obviously, this file doesn't yet exist, so it'll just create that file, essentially, with that name, and then input that into there. It's a little bit of an automated thing going on here, but not totally. Pretty simple, still. When your sound card doesn't work. And there's a reason why it doesn't work. Obviously, you just type password WD, or sorry, pass WD by itself, and it'll ask you to put your password in twice. That's so the confirmation can happen, as well as that way you don't have to have your password openly visible on the screen.
Shit. Oh, that's the way you're supposed to do it.
Okay.
You didn't see anything? Nothing at all. See? Yeah. Good. End of the line, Kerr.
He's sitting right there. Like this my engineering shit is kind of coming out. And I sound like one of those safety assholes, but ooh, that's DC current too, man. I don't know about that. I like a little flame will start coming up.
You've been messing around way too long. Alright guys, it's time for frickin' grub.
Feels a great effect.
For those of you who don't know, you can eat grubs, but it's gross.
You know, when I first heard that I've been using grub for years now, so I kind of stopped thinking about it. Oh yeah, this is where the hell really sets in here. I'll be honest. But with grub, I've always thought like that name was weird. Like, why are you calling it grub? What does it stand for? I actually don't know. Can someone explain? Like, I'll try to like screw with this. General rub down. You boot. No, but like I don't know what that really. It's gotta be an acronym of some kind, like a funny acronym. I don't know. But anyways, so this is the part where I admit to my fuck up, and I'll let him say it first, and then I will kind of explain. Maybe.
Do you smell that? My chicken sandwich is ready.
Yeah, I'd be working on that. The chicken sandwich is more appropriate.
Okay.
Pac-Man S with the lowercase y just means synchronize, and then I forget what the y actually stands for, but synchronize and then the y switch with that means synchronize my entire system, not a specific package.
Grub. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so now grub is actually installed in the in our MNT directory, in our actual installation directory. You do this.
This is where it really. That's where, yeah. Oh my god.
Okay, so basically what this error means is it means we fucked up literally everything, and we need to do everything all over again.
We do.
And I'm not even joking. What happened was we didn't make a beginning FAT32 partition before the EXT partition.
Again, so most computers, including the motherboard he's running right now on this machine, require some kind to be able for the BIOS to be able to read the disk to know what to look for, how to look for the OS. They need a compatible file table as well as a file system. Genuinely, most BIOS on most machines, can't read an EXT or Linux partition. Really, all they ever are designed to read were Windows based. So FAT32, or I believe in some cases, or actually most cases now, NTFS. But generally what Microsoft does is they write a very small boot sector to the MBR, which is not exactly a file system, but that just tells the computer, hey, this is where your file system is, and this is how to read that. And the BIOS says, okay, I'll go there, and it loads Windows. We don't have that kind of functionality on Linux. With Linux, most BIOSes don't really support GPT, or at least fully, where they can just boot to it or with it. So if you have a GPT file structure, it will read it, but it doesn't know where to look for things in it, if that makes any sense. So you have to put a little FAT32 partition there so that the BIOS knows to look at that first. That's pretty recognizable. It'll read, it'll boot to grub, and everything's good there. The other reason the BIOS boot partition, and this is kind of explaining that in a very technical way, block lists here, is because it kind of on the disk, when your computer's running and booting and doing its thing, it's actually moving your data around constantly, and sometimes that's why drives can get fragmented. You have to do defrags on them. Your data doesn't usually stay in the same place in the disk all the time, especially if you're doing a lot of file management. So that being said, if the BIOS has to keep looking elsewhere, sector-wise, all the time, it doesn't work. This really, in fact, most of the time, you won't be able to boot to your OS after a while. Which is why the beginning partition is pretty important to use. In fact, they require it now in Grub, which is why this doesn't work at all. Specifically, it technically could, but it doesn't because Grub doesn't want to support it. Grub's also annoying like this, but they do have a point here. I did not tell him to set that at the beginning of this because I thought, well, let's continue to use the MBR, so it should be okay. But unfortunately, it turned out that since we are using a GPT format now, magically, because, wonderful case scenarios, yeah. I also never had a clue. Seeing this video was the first time I actually saw what he was actually doing. He would kind of just tell me in some genuine ways what was going on, and I have to respond the best way I could. I was using my own virtual machine that was, of course, a bit different than his machine here. That being said, you're kind of comparing apples to oranges there, and I'm telling him how to peel an orange when I should be telling him how to cut an apple. So this is how this mistake really happened. Maybe plus or minus in a way. And maybe I'll explain more to this, but you probably genuinely get the gist. We'll go on with this.
I don't know if it's EXT 2, 3, or 4, to be honest. I don't even know if there is a 4. So
There is. It's
random frowny face.
Yeah, that happens every time.
Luckily, we've done everything already, and it's been pretty straightforward so far. We just have to do every single step again.
Indeed. So.
Very good. Reboot. Nope. Time to start again. Oh, shit! He landed right on the CPU fan.
Did see fire hazard?
So here we are again.
Sorry.
This is where the rubber meets the road. I do it all over again. Hopefully all my practice is going to pay off.
So this is the point where I did this. Because I wrote up the first bunch. I was sending him a list of huge commands to do. While I was figuring it out myself. Again, we're doing this pretty much all over a Discord chat. Literally just text Discord. I still have that file, by the way. I will bring it up now. And if you really are interested in this, I will give you a general brief look down about how this looked. I guess I don't know. The charm bar. OBX in its, or I'm sorry, OBX Outer Banks. No, God damn it. There we go. OBS, I'm sorry. So hopefully you can read this. He sped through this, which is, I of course I knew he would, but it was just kind of funny because this literally took me a few hours to do with him. And, the videos he does are great, they do, and again, I will say I do these videos too, believe it or not, more often, and I have deleted a lot of them in the past that I've done. It takes genuinely hours. The boat video I did previous to this one I'm going to upload, the boat video where I talked about my boat at the lake, that took me a good 3 hours to actually do in film. It was actually shorter time to do that than genuine. And the rest of the day and throughout the night, I spent literally on my MacBook Pro editing the damn thing. So I just found this part funny where he literally took, in less than a minute, blah, 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 it's done, when this really took hours. I'm sure editing this was not a short process either. But here's the file that I kind of wrote up that I might try also to use an instruction set if you're really interested in using it. But anyways, let's get back to the video. It happened this quickly, guys. God, I wish. Yeah, you might see why you just write a script and it took like a million more years to do. So, and we even missed some steps. One being the host name, 2 being the user or user login for root anyway, which you'll see later on in this video.
Okay, so after that I just shut down the system. And now after all of that, and without bootable flash drive, the system should just boot up normally.
Pretty much, until we discover we have no user login. But that is a good sign.
There's Grub.
Already. I can't tell if that's a dead pixel. Oh no, it's not. It's on the recording. Okay. This pixel right here looked like my monitor was dead.
Shit.
Ooh.
I forgot to set up a username.
Yep.
Rip. So, in order to fix that, we actually have to boot back into this because we can't actually log into our system. That's great.
It's not too difficult. Just mount the partition like he shows.
SDA 2. Fuck. Space. Unit. Okay.
Host name. The sound card
Druaga1's.
is right now. Oh. Yeah.
Okay, for real this time. That works. Weed legal login, yes. Root. Yeah, it worked. So right now, our installation is the most bare Arch Linux there is. There's not even any networking set up whatsoever. But hopefully a couple commands can get us on the network.
So yes, now as most of the drivers and things for the most part are for mostly default loaded, and you do have a pretty good working system here that's actually very usable once you get all your stuff installed, of course, but that's my point. This is pretty much bare basic, and this is what most people will when they install their thing or stuff, they'll pretty much start to configure it from here on out and get a list of packages and configs they want to use from there. Now, if you want to duplicate this amongst many machines, this is why I use the flash drive, or the boot image, I guess I should say, is very helpful when it's just a basic text mode, because you literally just run a script off, you load with the boot system, the bootable system on the flash drive, and within minutes you pretty much have that same full system again. So it's very good for provisioning system, versus Ubuntu, you have to configure that in the same machine over and over and over. Well, you could with the script, I guess, configure it differently. But again, in some ways, the Arch does make it easier for provisioning a certain system in whatever way. Alongside that, this is why Arch is genuinely not used amongst many people who just want a working system, because at the end of the day, after you've gotten all this done for your own PC at home, it's really no more beneficial than just Ubuntu or Linux Mint. Or I get that there's nitty-gritty technical differences, like, oh, well, there's not support for this or that on Debian like there is Arch, blah, 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 blah. Or maybe Arch has more updated repositories. Yeah, I get what you guys are saying. But genuinely, I actually use Debian in most places, and I'm here to tell you it works pretty well. I'm actually not a big fan of fully up-to-date software, as in like, here's the latest version of this kernel or latest version of this package. Well, when it comes to security packages and things, for the most part, that's decent, and for Linux, the latest stuff is mostly okay. But many times, even with drivers, let's say and this is a good example. I wanted the R9390, Radeon R9390, when I was a freshman in high school. I literally didn't. I waited until I was graduated to buy it, because I didn't have the money to really afford it. But it actually was nice, because now my graphics card, which I'm still using now, actually, there's no bugs or anything really, because in all that time they did all the bug fixing and everything was pretty much good to go by the time I got my hands on it. Which is one reason why I like to let the developers do their job and bug fix the thing before I put it in production on my system, instead of doing crappy workarounds right and left. I see people doing crappy workarounds right and left with the latest, greatest hardware and software. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I never have to do that, but that's because I use older equipment, which is still plenty usable. In fact, more so because it's been bug fixed, because it's had that time to test in the environment. Anyways, so Arch is kind of just this thing you can do if you want. If you want that kind of customization, I guess. Um, but if you're just wanting a Linux system, really, I can't find a good reason not just to use Ubuntu or Linux Mint or freaking Archbang or something that already comes. Like there's already Arch. There's distributions that use Arch, that openly use it. They just do all this for you, all this configuration for you, and then give you their installer image and say, there it is. You can even use that. But this I only see if you want to really have a full customized system, which is why we didn't get too far into that per se, because it's just I'm kind of repeating myself here a little bit, so I'm gonna keep going. But I guess that's to kind of explain why you might see us wrap this up more quickly than just going through. We might continue this into like another part, which I think he says later on in the video. But generally, Arch Linux like building your own Linux distro, which if you really want to do, great. If you don't, you just want a damn system that works like I do, that's all fine. It's fine to use Ubuntu or some shit.
So it finds both of my Ethernet devices, so whatever. Okay, well, let's make sure we can ping Google, or ping Google's DNS server.
So this is one of those times where, interestingly enough, it actually failed. That command he just ran actually failed here. No interfaces have a carrier. So it literally basically just dropped the request and forwarded it to this other process. I don't know in this case what 379 is. That's probably already another DHCP CD process. Again, I can't exactly tell you what is going on here because I don't know what 379 really is on the system. That could be anything, whatever the system used that number that time. But interestingly enough, this actually failed. We still have internet, I guess. So failed the way, I guess. Yep. So.
Okay. And then Xorg, because we need that for other things. Alright, so I guess default all can be all the Xorg. Whatever. Yes. And we got another download, guys. Alright, well, if you're as tired of text mode as I am, it's time for KDE. Alright, got a download ahead of us, so we'll let it run. Well, it didn't do anything visual because we're not done yet. We still have to install the graphics display manager.
And I believe I might have actually kind of been a little redundant there with telling him to install Xorg. So pretty much, genuinely, there's two different. There's Xserver and Wayland. Wayland is still very genuinely unsupported because it's pretty new desktop or window manager, or you're basically X manager. Whereas Xorg is the traditional one that everything still uses. In Linux or in Unix, in fact, Mac OS 10 for a long time, because it ran Unix, used Xorg or Xserver, or X11 really, for quite some time. I think with Mac OS 10 version, I think it's like, what? They stopped using it around Mountain Lion or Mavericks. I can't remember which version. But they've actually developed their own system now. But for a while, they were using Xorg to actually push, or to run their window manager on top of. When you go to install your own, like if you install Plasma, which is KDE by the way, or whatever desktop interface you're going to install, your package manager will genuinely go get that for you. I wasn't necessarily certain if that was going to happen. With Pac-Man, probably would. Again, I can't really tell you even now because I never tried it on my own. But you need, of course, you need Xorg to have a GUI basically. Again, I genuinely it'll go with that with everything else, but with the actual desktop interface itself, you're going to use. But I did not know for sure, so I just had him do that. So if that is redundant, I apologize. I just want to kind of point that out. I think there's something else that was comment on. I can't remember.
So, I mean, I guess you could just get a script that does all this for you.
Exactly.
But I think they call that Ubuntu or something.
Yeah, that's a good joke.
This is supposed to give you control over, you know, what you install, and I suppose I could use something other than KDE or Plasma and make all those changes, you know, whenever I wanted. But in theory, you could just do this with any Linux distribution and scrape out everything it came with and put your own stuff in there. I guess this is just really bare bones to start with.
Yeah, I won't go into again why. I've already explained this obviously, but genuinely, yes.
And you build yourself back up, I guess.
Sort of.
It's not exactly my cup of tea.
Not
and
really.
Finally.
So GDM is Graphics Display Manager. It's just known for GDM. This is the program that your system will actually. You can load right in to your desktop session right from boot up, but that requires you to be automatically logged in or log in through the terminal and initiate the command or the program that launches your desktop interface. Versus GDM is an automated system of sorts that when your system first boots, it runs as root and basically just loads and runs. So he's doing is enabling that to happen here. As I'm sure most Linux guys know GDM. That basically, and also it's display manager. It also you can set which desktop interface you want. Now he installed Plasma, and of course because he installed GDM actually runs on top of GNOME in a sense, or uses the GNOME interface anyway. So it will actually by default run GNOME, basic GNOME. He actually did not ever use KDE in his video. I might actually have to let him know that. But maybe he'll just know whenever he watches this. I don't know. But unfortunately, he didn't actually ever use KDE. Like you'll probably see later, he just used GNOME the entire time. You specify when you first log in you want to use KDE with GDM. I'll show you later. I'll show you GDM kind of is in this video.
All right. Not gonna fall asleep. Fuck.
I believe you can kind of reboot from that point.
Restart it.
So I told him to shut down every time he shuts off Arch Linux when we were booted to the USB stick. Because if you're going to load or boot the other OS, it generally isn't that big a deal. But to minimize any confliction, you want to pull the boot medium out because it's like another version of Arch Linux installed somewhere else in the computer, technically, that the BIOS can see. So it could be a point of confusion or contention against Arch Linux, which is why you want to shut down and completely pull out the flash drive and then start back up. But if you're going to be if you're just rebooting your computer to reboot for changes, you just without any other drives installed or anything, just reboot the machine. It doesn't matter. If you're only installing, it's a totally different thing when you're installing. But rebooting is fine from that point on.
Okay. Turn it back on. I think it's accessing the optical drive and it's slow.
So this right here is GDM. This is what loads on default. Now, if you're going to actually change, when you type a username in, usually it'll actually give you your. There is no user. He's doing everything with root on the system, but once he puts his username in, it'll be little settings or a little like gear down here to indicate settings. You click on that, it'll drop down, it'll appear, and it'll tell you what you want to use as a display manager, or I'm sorry, a desktop interface. The default for GDM is usually GNOME or whatever was configured for default for that OS, or distribution anyway. You can, of course, use KDE just fine with GDM. Pretty much, I think most desktop interfaces are going to support with GDM. There's a few that do not support GDM or GDM can't load, but typically it's usually pretty supportive of everything.
Holy shit! I wasn't expecting this to work.
So right there's that gear. So if you ever want to know.
Oh,
so right here's this is the GNOME interface. There's nothing here. Very simple. If he'd actually used KDE, it's been probably more interesting. But it's already good enough for him actually. So.
Damn. Got mouse. I don't even know what this is.
It's a GNOME.
Oh, I got nothing in
Definitely
here.
not. It's definitely not Plasma or KDE.
Okay, so there's stuff in there,
Do you have KDE installed right there?
but literally nothing else. This is all there is. This is it, because that's how fucking bare bones it is. I don't believe I got this far. Oh my god. Control Alt T. Is that going to give us terminal? No. Does this even come with a terminal, or do I have to go back to text mode? Control Alt F2. F3. Okay. Back in text mode. Alright. So, Pacman -S. Now, I will say, just to be clear, a guy named Tech Max Ware has assisted me in using all of these commands correctly. So from what I've learned so far, just typing commands in, can I figure out how to actually do something with it? Well, let's see. -ask IO Quake 3. No.
I have never used IO Quake 3, and I actually don't have that much experience with Pac-Man. It's genuinely easy to use. I believe Pac-Man ? Will give you the list of commands or a list of switches anyway that you can use with it. But it's genuinely easy to use. Pacman -S stands for synchronize, and that just means, hey, find this package within within the repository for Arch and install it to my system. They use the word sync because you're basically syncing what they have in the repository with your computer. Version, configuration, whatever else. So you might see me in the past using SY or S and then a lowercase y, uppercase S, lowercase y. That just means, hey, update the listings with what's in the repository now, because your computer might go out of it. That's kind of like the apt-get update and upgrade system. Well, apt-get update actually updates. Doesn't actually. Of course, apt-get update updates your repository. Apt-get upgrade in Debian actually upgrades all your packages that need to be upgraded to their latest versions and whatnot. SY kind of does both those functions in one, which is why some people prefer it. And there are differences, so yeah.
Chocolate Doom.
I don't know exactly. Again, I kind of stopped helping him at this point. I think I was doing something else and I wasn't really responsive. So I apologize there. But after a point, I think he kind of got it. I'm not saying he's dumb. I'm just saying he kind of understood. So, and I was doing other things too. So I was like, well, I gotta, get some sleep and other crap. It took like the entire day to really do this with him. But so this is not exactly me doing this anymore. Just to point out this is actually him. Not to like put the blame on him or something, but like because I don't really know what these packages actually kind of are. Oh, Doom's, but yeah, I don't know for sure. So the rest is kind of just more him. I'll probably comment on what he's doing maybe, but like it's not me at the point. Saying what he should be doing, I guess anyway.
Inkscape. It's got Inkscape.
Of course, that he needs a network to
Jesus.
run the network again every time. We talked about possibly getting the network where it loads on boot. I honestly couldn't figure out exactly how to do it with Arch. Again, Debian, you basically had an interfaces file. It's a little bit different on Arch, apparently. I know you can do this with NetTools. Again, at that point, I was getting tired. I just wanted to kind of do some, go to bed and continue my life. And so, I told him if he just runs a command every time, it should be okay. And obviously that sucks. So it's if you're going to be using Arch every day, you should definitely set up an automated network. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying to a point, I needed to do that. So that's why I did that then.
Build, retrieve. Okay, that didn't work. Okay. Firefox. Needs to be a capital S, apparently. That was not a capital S. Capitals mattering. No package.
I'm sure you obviously heard a knock on my door. I apologize. So.
Upgraded. So now I just... oh, right. That's right. I don't have internet anymore. IP address... and what was the other command? Okay. Okay, that works. Alright. So let's try to get Firefox now. Okay. I was on the internet, so we're still totally fair in thinking that my other options might actually work.
Yeah, so again, this is just kind of trying to get desktop stuff set up. Packages. Again, I can't really be too specific on what I know and don't know about this part because I really haven't played too much with the latest stuff in Pac-Man. So I'm actually just start skipping ahead here. I'm literally like almost an hour and 30 minutes into this, and I kind of am getting a little bit tired even now of doing this. So I'm doing this literally one shot without any editing. As you can imagine, this is like almost as bad as the song, actually. So I just want to kind of get this over with. But anyways, as well, I don't really have much to say on this part, so kind of skip forward ahead. He kind of, again, if you've watched the original video, he kind of just goes into installing, DOSBox and things like that, and he does play some games. Here, again, watching the video, you'll see there's no sound. Again, that is more than likely because of the Sound Blaster card. I can't really genuinely say that's exactly it, but if he is using the Sound Blaster card here, that's the first thing I would blame. Sound Blaster and Linux just really don't get along too well. Yes, he hears with a sound that wasn't working, sort of thing. Yeah, and of course DOSBox, Doom didn't work either, which tells me it pretty much was the sound card. Usually in GNOME too, you'll see a little icon here, even with basic GNOME, indicating the sound device. If that doesn't exist, it's probably not loaded correctly. So, yeah. Or maybe GNOME just doesn't have it installed. But yeah, there we go. We're just kind of working on it. Again, this is all this stuff he's doing. I'm sure I could comment on it, but it's one of those things where I just, I don't know. Most what he's doing is kind of fine. So just playing it with Arch Linux at this point, and just enjoy the video at that point. I don't know. So let me see if I can like get to a point where it's kind of getting wrapped up here, which is probably about here, maybe.
God damn it! Close the tabs. I don't care. Fuck off. Why can't I play the game as it is? Paula Duke is on. It turns out that it's numpad for some reason. Dun, dun, dun. Well, I will say this is smooth as butt.
I will say graphics adapters, especially for NVIDIA, generally work pretty decently. But Sound Blaster is where it's going to be problematic. And if you don't need another network adapter, I would definitely consider removing one of those.
Like, whoa. Look how smooth this is. This is ridiculous. Alright, well, you get the idea. I can't go up or down for some reason.
Yes, there's a few
Alt F4 still kills
spots.
things. So, there's of course more we could probably do in the future. I'm probably going to have Tech Maxware back at some point. We'll do more stuff with Arch Linux than you've seen here already. Again, this feels a little bit like a repeat of last time, but at least it gives me a feeling that's kind of good that I-ish did every step of the installation through the command line, through a text mode install, without having to have it all done for me. Although it kind of was done for me anyway, since I didn't know what commands to put unless I got a little bit of help. But
yeah, mostly he did it actually, I'll say he did most of it on his own, especially to the point that I didn't even see what it was at all going on. He was just kind of telling me what was going on, and I kind of was having to guesstimate, and it's like, oh, okay, this might be it, right? So we kind of got a little bit of synchronizing going on here with me, like following along in a virtual machine on my own. But again, I mean, he was kind of on his own. It's kind of like he's on the moon, you know, and I'm telling him, here's how to survive, you know? So
if you ever want to set up Arch Linux, this gives you a step-by-step tutorial, I guess you could say, on just how to do it yourself if you're interested. And then you can say, hey, I installed Arch Linux. Huh? Not bad, right? And then it's your custom operating system. There's no bullshit that you don't need. It's just you install what you need, and that's it.
yeah, that's pretty much what Arch is really good for the most part. Like I said, I already kind of explained that. I don't know what else to say about it. I'm happy to help with this project, and I mean, I thought it was pretty good. I wish I could be more help with more time I have, but unfortunately, my schedule is actually surprisingly all over the place. So I can never guarantee I'll be, unless I literally have it on a schedule, can never really guarantee that I'll be somewhere in some time, whatever. I mean, I literally don't even know I'll be here in a week from now. So yeah, that's great. I don't know what else is to see here.
No extra little shit, and I do appreciate that you don't want any bullshit. So thanks everybody for watching. It's been a pretty fun day today, and we'll see you next time.
I'm not sure why internet is just like crapping out if the video quality is weird. I don't know. Yeah, I actually use iMovie. I literally am so stupid and don't give that much of a shit about editing that I will use iMovie. And it's not, I'm not about to say it's really the greatest choice ever, but for me, I don't really have enough time to sit here and fiddle with all of this. So I'm just like, you know what? I'll be good. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.